Welcome to another deck profile video. Today we are going to be covering the Imperialdramon DNA Virus. This is actually a really fun deck to play. I did build it originally in EX3, but I debuilt it because I found it to be just a bit of a one-trick pony. And then obviously since EX3 it's actually had some further support come out, namely in the promo Shadramons and the new BT16 set with the new Dino B. So we'll get straight into it, and I have made some changes, but you'll see why shortly. So regarding the Digi-Eggs, I'm only playing 4. I'm still only playing the Demi Meramon from BT3, where the on-deletion effect is you trigger draw 1, and then you can trash 1 card from your hand. I still find it's pretty handy to make sure that your pieces are in the trash, ready for you to maximize your effects. I did opt to possibly change it to the red Coromon from BT14, I believe. However, I still believe this is the best egg for the deck. There are going to be occasions where you may not necessarily be able to digivolve on top of your Digi-Egg, but that's actually part of the game plan with this, especially for some of the Digimon. Moving on to the level 3s. So we will start with 3 of the EX3 Vmon. Its on-play effect is that you may trash a card with Imperialdramon in its name or 3 in its traits from your hand, and if you do, you draw 2 cards. Its inherited effect is essentially when you have a purple Digimon in play, you gain an additional 2000 DP. I did opt to run 4, but it's just there are some of the other rookies I prefer playing instead of this one, so for me just having 3 works, but you cannot have 4. The next level 3 that we have is none other than the main searcher in this deck, which is Wormmon from EX3. Essentially on play you reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, you add 1 purple Digimon card with the 3 trait or Imperialdramon in its name, and then you basically trash 1 card, and then you bottom deck the last card. Or in some cases you may end up bottom decking 2 cards depending on what it is that you reveal. But yeah, this is the mandatory 4-off for this deck. It's inherited as well, so if you have a red Digimon in play, it gains retaliation. So it's also quite a good card to use if you want to swing into something more powerful and you want to get all the on-deletion effects, namely things like the promo Shadra. The next level 3 that we run, so we're only running 2 of this one, but we're running the new Vmon from BT16. It's a your turn effect, where once per turn when one of your other Digimon are played, or digivolves into a card with 3 in its traits, or is green, you gain 1 memory. Its inherited effect is a your turn effect, but your Digimon gets a 2000 DP boost. I find this has actually come in handy in some games, especially against testing against Magnamon, where I'm able to swing over it, if it is unsuspended, and ultimately my DP will be a lot higher. So it is a good 2-off to have. I don't think you need more than that. There are some deck profiles I've seen that play 4, but I definitely think 2 for me is enough. And then our last rookie for this deck is Wormmon from BT16. So it has a start of main phase effect as well as an on-play, but essentially if it's your turn, one of your Digimon may digivolve into a level 4 Digimon card with the Insectoid or 3 trait in your trash with the Digivolution cost reduced by 1. So it's actually a very good card for this deck, especially as you want to be digivolving from trash and then utilising your level 4's abilities as well as your level 5's. It's inherited. It's just a when attacking once per turn effect, but you get to suspend one of your opponent's Digimon. So it's also very good to avoid blockers if you're swinging for game. At the same time, it may well be that you want to purposely suspend a Digimon and you may be able to DNA again and swing over it. So this is a good card to have 4 of. Sadly, it doesn't digivolve over the Demi Meramon. But it's not a bad thing, because ideally you want to be playing that anyway. So we'll be moving on to the level 4s. So I don't have 4 copies of this card because it's just ridiculous to get hold of at the moment. But you want 4 of the new Shadramon promo. It's got a when digivolving effect where you can play a Vmon or a Wormmon from your trash suspended without paying the cost. And its on deletion effect is essentially you get to play out 1 Vmon or Wormmon from your trash without paying the cost. That's its inherited effect. But it's just a solid 4-off to have for this deck. In testing, this card is just ridiculous for this deck. It's essentially the core. And don't get me wrong, like in its place, I've been playing the other versions of level 4s that I could possibly use, such as the Stingmon and the XVmon. I was running 2 of these per each before I found this one Shadramon. And still pretty good. They're still good alternatives if you haven't got the Shadramons and you're on a budget, like I am. But basically the XVmon's good. You get raid. It's got an on-play and when digivolving effect. You can't you can choose one of your Digimon. It won't be deleted in battle until the end of your opponent's turn. Also has the inherited of gaining plus 2000 DP. Whereas Stingmon on the other hand, it's got retaliation. It's on play and when digivolving effect is suspending one of your opponent's Digimon, and it has the same inherited effect. So if you were to run up with the Wormmon and Stingmon, you could be suspending 2 bodies in play instead of just the 1. But these are good alternative cards to have. But ideally, yeah, you want to be running for the promo Shadramon just because the card is ridiculously good. Next up, we have a 4-off from EX3, nonetheless. We've got Flamedramon. I still think you need to run a full playset of this card, as well as the other version, which I'll show you in a second. But when digivolving, you get to activate one of its effects. Essentially, you can either choose to digivolve one of your other Digimon into a level 4 purple Digimon card with the free trait from your trash for its cost, or alternatively, if you already have that card out, you can just use its secondary effect, which is you may DNA digivolve with another Digimon for its DNA digivolution cost, apparently. Arasa's galore. And then the end of turn effect is effectively just an end of turn DNA. So yeah, it's just a good 4-off to have for this deck. You kind of need it to really maximize the effects that you have. The next 4-off that we run and the last set of champions is going to be the EX3 Shadramon, which is basically Flamedramon's twin for this set. It does exactly the same thing except the 2 effects that you have. The first one, you get to DNA digivolve one of your other Digimon into a red Digimon with 3 in its traits from trash. And the second effect, again, is just the fact that you can DNA with one of your other Digimon. So yeah, it's just customary, I think, to have a playset of that and a playset of Flamedramon just to maximize the ability of DNA. It also has the same end of turn effect, which is end of turn DNA. Moving on to the level 5s. So now I was running a full playset of these, however I have reduced it by 2, but starting with EX3 Imperialdramon. Now, when DNA digivolving, you can essentially play out the Dino Beamon from your trash without paying the cost. It also has an on deletion effect that where you may play 1 Vmon from your trash without paying the cost. Its inherited effect is essentially if this Digimon has Imperialdramon in its name, it gets security attack +1. The only reason why I've knocked this down to 2 is just because in previous testing I have found that having the next card is actually somewhat relatable in this current format. Don't get me wrong, having security attack +1 is actually kind of good. You can be aggressive if you really wanted to from the start, but the next card is kind of needed, especially in BT16's format so far. But that's the level 5s for the first 2 cards. The next 2, we've got another EX3 card, but this time it's the Dino B. So I have decided to throw 2 of these in. Essentially, it's the same effect when digivolving, but when DNA digivolving, you get to play the Imperialdramon instead from your trash. It's on deletion. Instead of playing the Vmon, you will play the Wormmon without paying the cost. and it's inherited. This one allows you to swing over unsuspended Digimon as long as you have Imperialdramon in your name. So it is a very good card. But I just found in previous, I recently played this in an Evolution Cup format, and I didn't run these 2 Dino Bs. Instead, I had the 4 Imperialdramons. And whilst it's nice going aggressive, sometimes there were situations where I should have just swung over unsuspended Digimon, get rid of the threat from the board, and get through it with piercing. So yeah, I think just a nice even balance of those 2 particular cards is good. Now, this BT16 set has kind of blessed me in a way, but we're also running 4 of the new Dino Beamon from BT16. I don't know why, but every time I pull an alt art card from this set, it's a Dino B, so it kind of just called to me. The Dino B itself has Raid. It also has Partition. So if you're not familiar with Partition, effectively you can bring up the 2 level 4 sources that would be used to DNA Digivolve if your Digimon is deleted by an opponent's effect. But, Partition, unfortunately, it doesn't trigger if you die in battle, and it also doesn't trigger if you use your own effects to delete it. But it's when Digivolving effect is essentially if you DNA, you can play out any level 5 or lower Digimon card with the free trait from your trash without paying the cost. Then there is an errata to this, so then you may give one of your Digimon Rush, and then it would attack a player. It's not you may attack a player. So just don't get caught out by that. Essentially, you have to choose whether you're going to give that Digimon Rush or not, and then once you do, it will swing. So it's inherited effect as well. Again, it's Partition, so it's really good to protect your Digimon now. If you do hit a security bomb, you're just going to DNA again, and you'll just be swinging for fun. But yeah, this is customary to have 4 of this card now because it's just super strong in comparison to the other level 5 DNA cards that you have. But that's only 8 level 5s for this deck. Next up, our level 6s. Now, it's probably blasphemous for me to only be playing 3 of these, but I'm running 3 of the Imperialdramon Dragon modes from EX3. It's got a when DNA, a when digivolving effect, but essentially when DNA digivolving, one of your opponent chooses one of their Digimon and then deletes the rest. Then this Digimon gets blitz. When attacking, once per turn, this Digimon gains an additional 2000 DP, and then it may digivolve into a fighter mode for its cost. Now, it's a really good card for board wiping. This card came in handy in many of my previous matchups. But yeah, I don't really think you need 4. 3 is enough. It will pop up. And if you are bricking, there are some other level 6s you can use to buy you some time. But just a 3 off of this card is enough. Next up, we have the boss of the deck. So we have a 2 of the EX3 Imperialdramon Fighter mode. So with this one, it automatically has piercing. When digivolving, you may return 1 dragon mode from its digivolution sources to the bottom of the deck, and then it will prevent any of your opponent's security effects from triggering as you swing into them. And that's only for the turn. Its on deletion effect allows you to play out the Wormmon and a Vmon from your trash without paying the costs. So it's very good. Effectively, if it does get deleted by security effect, you can spawn out the level 3s, and if you have Partition underneath, you're spawning out the level 4s, so you can go very wide. But yeah, I mean, again, it's probably blasphemous again for me to only be playing 2 of these, but I found they often did come up. I don't really think I've had any games where I've bricked not seeing them. But yeah, I think a 2 of is nice. However, you can consider going to 3 or potentially 4, depending on what your kind of play style is, I guess. And the last 2 level 6s we're running, we're going Valkyrymon. This card is just stupid good. It's obviously an ace card, so it's a counter card, but it's either on play or when digivolving effect is that all of your opponent's Digimon gain minus 5000 DP for the turn. So it's essentially could be a board clearer, and it's only a 7 cost to play. Alternatively, I mean, you will be digivolving for a 4 cost, but this card will help you buy time should you feel like you're bricking pieces. Its all turns effect as well is a once per turn, but when a card is removed from a security stack, you can delete one of your opponent's 8,000 DP or lower Digimon, and then if it didn't delete any Digimon, it just gains security attack +1 until the end of your turn. So ultimately you could swing for a couple, you can swing anywhere between 1 to 3 checks on your next turn, should you not hit any security bombs and should it remain in play. But yeah, it's just a solid card overall. I blasted into this a couple of times in my previous matchups, and it really does buy you time. Alternatively, you could run the fighter mode Ace. That's in BT16 as well. However, for me, I certainly prefer this card. It just suits well with this deck. And ultimately, you can get rid of major issues. Essentially, if somebody's trying to swing over one of your level 5s as well, you can get rid of that problem just by blasting and just letting it swing into Valkyrie and die. So yeah, it's just a really good 2-off to have. Next up, we have our Tamers. Now, I've opted to run 4 of these, just on the basis that this card just gels very well with any purple deck, really. But it's analog use from EX1. On play, you get to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. You add 1 Digimon card among them, and then you trash the remaining cards. Its all turns effect is when one of your level 5 or higher Digimon with Digivolution cards is deleted, you may suspend the Tamer, and you gain a memory and you hatch an egg. So it's good for restarting as well. And being aware that obviously with this deck, if you are going to delete that level 5 or 6, if it's still your turn, it's actually quite handy because then you can set yourself up ready for the next turn. So I just find running a 4 off of this card is ideal, especially with it being only a 2 cost to play. And then lastly, the 2 other Tamers I play is Davis and Ken from BT16. It has a start of main effect, but you can play out the Vmon or a Wormmon from your hand without paying the cost. And then at the end of your opponent's next turn, the card returns back to your hand. Ideally, you want to be playing out that extra body to then Digivolve and then DNA, so then you avoid it coming back to hand. But in some cases, that may not necessarily be the case. It also has a your turn effect, but when one of your Digimon would Digivolve into a blue or a green Digimon, by suspending this Tamer, you gain 1 memory. If you're DNA Digivolving, then you trash 3 Digivolution cards under your opponent's Digimon. Sadly, those effects don't work in this deck because currently we're not running any green or blue level 4s. So ideally, you're only using this card for its start of main effect, but that's not a bad thing because it will speed up your progression, and it really does speed up this deck overall to allow you to be somewhat aggressive. But we're only running 6 Tamers. I did run 3 of the Davis and Ken initially, but I've decided to take 1 out. And then lastly, we have our option cards. So the first one we're running, Calling from the Darkness from BT7. Its main effect, delete one of your Digimon, and then you can return up to 2 of your Digimon cards from your trash back to your hand. It's restricted for a reason. I must specify as well, it's purple Digimon that you return, no other colours, and a majority of this deck is purple. But yeah, it's obviously restricted for a reason. It's just a very good card, and it did come up a few times in previous testing, which I'm quite fortunate for. Its security effects, it's not very strong at all. It just adds this card to your hand, doesn't do anything else. But yeah, this particular card is very good, just to make sure that you get your pieces. We have decided to run a defensive card in this deck, and that's Crimson Blaze, BT8. You can play this card and reduce it by a memory for each of your opponent's Digimon. So in some cases, you may even play it for 1 or 2. But its main effect is deleting all of your opponent's Digimon with 6,000 DP or less, and then your opponent can't play Digimon by effects until the end of their next turn. This card is, again, really relevant for this kind of format, especially if you're going up against a blue-green Imperial or a mirror match with Virus. With cards like Davis and Ken playing out Digimon by effects, this card will stop that. But yeah, I didn't run any defensive cards initially, but it's definitely ideal to run at least 1 defensive card, and there are various options you could play in there. ideally you're going to be running a red option card for deletion. The last option card we run in the deck is 2 of the Missed Memory Boosts. I love the artwork on this, by the way. But its main effect is that you trash the top 2 cards of your deck and then you draw 1 card. So it's really, really good to try and progress your trash. It also has the delay effect of gaining 2 memory. So you could spawn these option cards out and then ultimately combine that with the analog youth, or to just bounce up the free memory, even if you just delay it when you're on 1, and then potentially sort yourself out ready for the next turn. But yeah, just a 2 of that is fine. You need to run them realistically. You need the memory. There are some cases where you obviously won't have that memory available, so just being able to delay it is ideal. But that's it. That's the 50 card deck for Virus. In terms of tech cards, just off the top of my head again, this is kind of a running theme, so I don't plan this ahead. I just think about it here and now, just to see if anything really does pop. But regarding the level 3s, I mean, you wouldn't really play anything other than what you've seen, unless you want to play Digimon with effects like, Psychmon, for example, where players can't play Digimon by effects, or reduce play costs, things like that. But in terms of the level 4s, again, realistically, you want to be playing the Flamedramons and the Shadramons. If not, then obviously the best way to go about it would be to opt for either playing the XV or the Stingmon from BT16. Other alternatives could be, Sethmon from BT16 as well, which is also a red and purple Digimon card. Or you could play any other purple level 4s if you think it's necessary for trashing more cards or whatnot. Level 5s, again, you're not really going to be playing anything other than what you've already seen. The only other alternative would be things like Chimeramon. If you want to stick to the whole DNA route. But yeah, ideally, Chimeramon off the top of my head is probably the best alternative. I don't really think you want to play any other level 5s in this. Level 6s wise, naturally, I mean, I've shown you the Valkyremon already, but the alternative to Ace type cards would be the Imperialdramon Fighter mode, which is a stupidly good card anyway, and especially if you've DNA'd, you're going to have a lot of sources underneath your Digimon, so you can bounce almost anything. And you can also swing a couple of times, if you've managed to keep it in play until your turn. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, you could possibly maximize the dragon modes up to 4, bring in another fighter mode, so you could do a 4 and 7 split. 4 and 3 split. But otherwise, I mean, you could opt to use any of the new sort of Imperial bits, really. You can use the new BT16 dragon mode. That will digivolve over the top of Dino B and Imperialdramon, no problem. You just won't be able to DNA into it, of course, and it won't come with Blitz. But yeah, I realistically, I think you'll be playing more so any of the sort of Imperial stuff. In regards to Tamers, you've got Taikamiya from, I think it's BT1, which is the red colour card. It's a memory setter, and if you have more than 4 Digivolution sources, you gain security attack +1. So that's a really good alternative to have. You've also got Matishida from the, I think it's ST16 deck with the Wolf of Courage. Again, that's a memory setter, and you can, I think you can suspend it to gain a memory if you trash a card from hand or add a card to hand, one or the other. But that's a purple colour card in general as well, so that goes very well with the deck. In terms of option cards, I mean, you can really use any sort of red colour deletion card. You've got Gaia Force, you've got Trident Gaia, Atomic Blaster, things like that. It goes down well. But otherwise, in terms of purple colour cards, realistically, I mean, you could use things like Deathclaw from, I think, Starter Deck 6, which could go down well. You've got Pandemonium Flame, I think it's called. I can't remember what set that's from, but just look at the screen. I think it's BT7, but don't hold me to that. But yeah, I mean, you have quite a range to throw into this, but ideally the aim of the deck is to make sure that you can DNA, get your pieces together, throw it in the trash, and then maximize digivolving from trash, and then swing for however many checks. This deck is fun. It's definitely a lot better than it was back in EX3. It's certainly not a one-trick pony anymore. You can mix and match. So I'm glad I've rebuilt it. So far, I've only played it once properly in an Evolution Cup where 16 players turned up and it finished in 5th. If you have seen the community posts, you'll see exactly what the matchups were and how they ended. If you're not following that community, then by all means, please feel more than welcome to take a look. I try to fill in match reports where I can. But that's it. That's all I can recommend. Well, actually, I lie. Level 7s. You can throw in Def-X if you really, really wanted to. However, again, whilst it can be played for a reduced cost and so forth, I mean, you're not going to be using it from trash. You could potentially return it using Calling from the Darkness. However, I truly don't think Def-X needs to be in this deck. You could use other things like Omnimon Blitz from BT5, or Omnimon Swart for that matter. There are so many options you could use for level 7, so I just don't think there's enough room in this deck to play them. But they're option, you can build a deck as you see fit. If you feel like you want to throw a level 7 in, go for it. Personal preference for me, however, is to leave them out. But that's it. That's literally it. That's all I can think of off the top of my head. But thank you again for watching the video. Feel free to let me know what you think. Throw your comments my way, and what else you may recommend to throw in. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, by all means, please do. All support is appreciated. And naturally, you can keep an eye on what videos will be coming out. But this is the second BT16 video we've released. And we are going to be doing a lot more. So there's more and more to come. But thank you again, and take care.